The AFC South is wide open. You have a lot of veteran-led teams, but a lot of questions to go along with them. Today, the agenda is simple. We're going to be answering these questions by breaking down these rosters and predicting their record for the upcoming NFL season. So, who's going to win this division? Well, let's find out. Now, as always, drop your predictions down in the comment section below. I get back to every single comment as quickly as I possibly can, as I always have. But let's kick it off with the number one overall pick, Cam Ward, and the Tennessee Titans. Last year, they were a one-sided football team with a rookie head coach. The offense really struggled, but the defense, well, they flourished. I think they were second in yards allowed per game. So the defense did their job, but they just weren't putting up enough points. And they tried to address that this offseason. They drafted Cam Ward, who should be their next franchise quarterback. They paired him with Gunnar Helm, tight end out of Texas, and Alec Iomanner, who has a lot of injury concerns, but he brings all the physical tools you want out of an NFL wide receiver out of Stanford there late in the NFL draft. Now, defensively, they addressed the back end. Of course, years prior, they had a guy by the name of Kevin Byard. Titans fans, you might know him, but he was such a pivotal part on the back end of your defense, and he left a couple years ago. You replace him now with Kevin Winston, a guy that was a multiple-year starter at Penn State, and get this, he only had one career missed tackle, and it was on the play that he got injured. Only time in his career that he got injured at the collegiate level. So I love their draft. I think they're a sneaky winner. Outside of that, you did everything you could this offseason to make Cam Ward's job as easy as possible. You bring in a Dan Moore, a bit of an overpay, but regardless, you brought in some offensive line help. Tyler Lockett to be a good veteran mouthpiece, and Dramont Jones on the defensive line. Ultimately, when you look at their offseason, I like it. Again, the goal of this team was to make their number one pick, his job as easy as possible, and I think they did that. Now, when you talk about this Titans team and the entire AFC South, they play arguably the two toughest divisions in football, the AFC West and the NFC East. So their schedule in this entire division schedule, they're all going to be incredibly tough. So keep that in mind because these records might not look necessarily pretty. But for this Titans team, this is a year that I think is more about the win-loss column. I think it is about showing promise, being in games that you're not supposed to be in, and ultimately seeing why you drafted a certain player number one overall. You just want to see promise and potential. Ultimately, I think it's a big year for Brian Callahan. On paper, I'm not a big fan of him so far with his decision-making and overall his capability as a head coach. Regardless, maybe this year he can prove to us all, despite the record, that he is here to stay. I think the Titans open up the year splitting their first four games. Going into Denver for the first start of your career is incredibly tough. So against the reigning defensive player of the year, Cam Ward, they show promise, but they're going to lose that one. Lose to the Rams, who I think will probably win the NFC there in week two. After that, I think you do bounce back with two huge divisional games. And again, at the end of the year, it's about the small wins in 2025, and we'll talk about these divisional wins later on. After that, when you look at their schedule, week 5 to week 9, you play a lot of teams that I just believe in more this year. As simply put, Arizona in Arizona, the Raiders in Las Vegas. Those are two teams that I think are going to be on the bubble of the NFL playoffs. So going into their environments early in the season, it's going to be incredibly tough. So I have them losing those ones. New England, Indianapolis, and the Chargers, all tough games as well. So at the midseason mark, quickly, you're already 2-7, and the season looks dim. But here is where I think Titans fans can, well, actually get excited for 2026. Because throughout the second half of the season, you have a lot of games. Houston, Seattle, Jacksonville, San Francisco, Kansas City. A lot of good teams on the second half of your season where if you can just show promise and fight these games, maybe even steal one of these games that I don't have you winning, I think that's going to be huge for the momentum and the morale of this team, despite the record being as bad as it is. So, as you've heard me say multiple times, this year is not about the record. It's about improvement. But ultimately, I'm sure that Cam Ward's going to have a similar impact of CJ Stroud and Jaden Daniels, and I'm going to look foolish with this record prediction by the midseason mark. Now let's move towards the division champs of the last few years. The Houston Texans, they lost a lot this offseason. And unlike the Titans, who try to make their quarterback's job easier, this is a team that's We have a promising young quarterback. Let's make his job a living hell. CJ Stroud this year lost his two best offensive linemen and his number two wide receiver in one off season. So it's been rough for the offense. And now CJ Stroud's in a situation where, sure, he has Dalton Schultz, Joe Mixon, Nico Collins, solid weapons. But outside of that, you now have Jaden Higgins, who by all means was my favorite rookie wide receiver, and Jalen Noel. This team proves. Now, unlike the Tennessee Titans, the Houston Texans went into this offseason and said, we have CJ Stroud, a top five level quarterback. Instead of making his job easier, let's do the exact opposite of that, whatever that may look. And honestly, on paper, it does look like that because they lost their two best offensive linemen, an all pro in Laramie Tunsil, and their number two wide receiver in Stephon Diggs. This is a team that lost a lot offensively. So going into the offseason, they weren't really able to replenish that, at least as far as proven names at the NFL level. But they were able to go out there and draft both of the Iowa State wide receivers, Jaden Higgins and Jalen Noel. This whole team is just about continuity, chemistry, brotherhood, and they got two starting receivers on a team that was one game away from the college football playoff. So for the Texans, Jaden Higgins, by all means, I love the potential and the talent of him, but I think it's going to make this offense very predictable and kind of easy to defend, at least early on in the season until Tank Dell returns. Let's remember that he broke his leg and he won't be back until the midseason mark. But I honestly think that going into this year, they're going to start slow. Not because I don't believe in Bobby Slowick, not because I don't believe in CJ Stroud in this offense, but I think going in week to week, defensive coordinators are just going to say, okay, we can just load up the box and double team Nico Collins. That is going to put these rookie wide receivers like Jaden Higgins, like Jalen Noel, in a very difficult situation because they're going to have to step up and they're going to have to step out from day number one. They're going to have to be pivotal parts of the production of this offense. And sure, the potential is there, the talent is there for those guys to produce from day number one, but it's going to force CJ Stroud to get these rookies the ball in big time situations. And honestly, again, I think that's going to make them very predictable when they go to pass the football. So don't be shocked if behind the legs of Nick Chubb and Joe Mixon, this team is very run heavy early on in the season until these rookies find their confidence. But as you see by the record, I think they struggle very early on. But here is a rare situation where I prefer an early bye week. You go into that bye week at 1-4 after dropping games to the Rams, Jacksonville, Tennessee, and Baltimore. I gave you the win against Tampa Bay because I just can't see them going 0-5. But here, you reset, you are getting healthier, you're getting more confident, at least as far as the younger options on this team. And let's pick it back up. You win two of the next three coming out of the bye. Seattle, San Francisco, you lose to Denver. That one's a toss-up, which, again, the record may not matter at the end of the day. After that, you keep it going. You win 2 out of 3 again. You do lose a game to Buffalo. I wanted to give you that game. So again, Denver, Buffalo, two toss-up games that could go in Houston's favor, especially because they're at home at that point in the season. And now it's week 13. I think this is the point where you're starting to say, we got Tank Dell back. He's back, and he's back in full ready-to-go motion. So now you got 4 really good wide receivers, 2 good running backs, a top 5 quarterback, and this offense is looking to finish the season strong. So despite being 5-6, I think you get hot. I think you might go into the playoffs as the hottest team in football, and you win all but one of the last couple games. Now, I will say going into Arrowhead, very tough environment. But after that Arrowhead game, Arizona, Las Vegas, the Chargers, you had their number last year. And with the dominance you showed, I can't see getting it. I can't see the result being too much different. And I think week 18, you finish it off 10-7 on the year. No shocker winning the division. Now, if you've noticed the trends in the schedule so far, well, I think that's going to continue. But for the Indianapolis Colts, this offseason was about, well, who is our quarterback? Is it Anthony Richardson? Is it the guy that has basically more rushing touchdowns than passing touchdowns in 2 years as a starter? Is this the guy that has missed half of his NFL career so far? Or is it going to be Daniel Jones, a guy that last year spent some time in Minnesota? A very similar system as both Kevin O'Connell and Shane Steichen come from the same coaching tree. Interesting, right? Who is their quarterback? Right now, Anthony Richardson is hurt yet again. Shocker. And this is the guy in Daniel Jones that looks to be the day one starter if Richardson doesn't come around and really turn his game around, which is not going to happen. I'm a Gators fan. I support all of my players, especially the quarterbacks, because, well, the Gators, we don't really produce NFL level quarterbacks. So Richardson coming out had all the physical tools to be a great player at the NFL level. But the same sentiment that I had in 2023 on this channel about Anthony Richardson is the same today. He makes difficult plays look easy, and he makes easy plays look way too difficult. So, this is a guy in Anthony Richardson that, sure, the tools are there. You like what you see, but he just can't do the simple stuff. And if you can't do the simple stuff at the NFL level, at the most important position, your team and you are going to struggle as a result. So that's why I think Daniel Jones was actually a great addition and probably the best addition, despite them bringing in a starting cornerback one in Charvarius Ward. Now, in the draft, I do like what they did. Tyler Warren out of Penn State, a do-it-all tight end, could be generational. And DJ Giddens, receiving running back out of Kansas State, like what they did in that regard as well. But like other teams in this division, I think they start off relatively slow. I gave them the win against Miami, but losing to Denver, Tennessee, the Rams, and Vegas, all four of those teams have great defense, good to great defenses, and I just don't trust Daniel Jones or Richardson against those defenses. So again, these teams that they're playing have the offenses to match, but better defense. It ultimately is just a bad rap as far as a schedule. Now after that, I think you kind of bounce back in a way. You know, you're winning, you're losing, you're winning, losing. That trend just kind of continues all the way until week 10. So you head into your bye week at 4-6. Now, after the bye week, you see you have a very tough stretch. You're in Kansas City, in Jacksonville, in Seattle. You have San Francisco and Houston along that way as well. Houston twice, by the way. I just think ultimately you win some of those games. You go 7-10. And this is finally going to be the end of a chapter. I think Shane Steichen will stay for years to come. But Anthony Richardson, I think this is the end of an era for him in Indianapolis. And he can end up in a place like Pittsburgh, for example, after Rodgers retires. And finally, we have a team that is led by the youngest head coach and GM in the league, the Jacksonville Jaguars. Of course, they brought in Liam Cohen as their coach. Tampa Bay's offensive coordinator last year, they lit it up. And this is a team in Jacksonville that desperately needed some offensive production and help. They get that in Liam Cohen, at least on paper. And then they also brought in James Gladstone, a 34-year-old GM, and many would probably just scoff at the idea of that. But this is a guy that's already left his mark. Bringing in a guy like Wyatt Mullum out of West Virginia, he had his ups, he had his downs. Very rough offseason, but last year for the Volunteers, he had very solid tape. And in the draft, they made a big shocker trade, going from 5 to 2, giving up multiple assets. But you bring in a guy that at the collegiate level might be the greatest talent that we've ever seen in Travis Hunter. So this is a guy that could play both sides of the ball. That's been a big talk this offseason. I'm interested to see what they do. Now, this is a team that did lose a lot this offseason, despite bringing in a generational talent. You lost Evan Ingram, you lost Christian Kirk, Gabe Davis, who had his off-the-field questions, and Mitch Morse, of course, up front on the offensive line. This is a team that lost a lot, and it's going to be a challenge for Liam Cohen and Trevor Lawrence to quickly find chemistry, both with between each other, as far as finding comfortability with play calling and situationships, but also with the weapons on the field, and again, their decision-making in big-time moments. So it's going to be a bit of an interesting season for Jacksonville. I could see them winning this division because they have the talent, and I'm one of the few people that still believe in the talent of Trevor Lawrence. So, with those things in mind, I think they're going to make a run at it. I think you open up against Carolina, you win that one at home, in front of the fans, get the pool ready because a lot of people are going to be in it. But then you lose to Cincinnati, you lose to San Francisco, but I think you beat Houston. So you open up the year winning your games at home, losing them on the road. Going into the bye week, you lose against the teams that you're simply just not better than. Kansas City, the Rams, you lose those games, but you do beat Seattle. So you go into the bye week, like many teams in this division, under 500, but can you bounce back? Can you answer the call and make that playoff push? The Texans are the only ones that have so far. I think you go into Vegas and get a big-time win there. I am a big fan of Vegas this year if you're new to the channel, but I think Jacksonville, I'll give you that one. After that, you see you go on a bit of a run, winning 5 of the next 7 games, and now you are 8-6 on the season. So going into the last 3 weeks, you are 8-6. You only really need to win 2 of these next 3 to make the playoffs. Can you do it? Well, I think it's a very tough road ahead. You go into Denver, into Indianapolis, and you're home against Tennessee. 2 divisional games, 1 on the road, and you're going into the toughest environment in football in Mile High. I think you're going to fall short yet again. This is typical Jaguars fashion where you get there, but then you fall short. We saw it in the playoff run. We saw it the year after when they started like 7-1. At one point, they were like the #1 seed in the conference, and then they fell short. I think this is what's going to happen to close out this year. 8-9, which is going to lead us to this AFC South picture. The Texans, there we go, they will win the division for what, the 3rd or 4th year straight, and they will represent the AFC South. I can also see the Texans going 9-8. Regardless, I think they win the division. The Jaguars at 8-9, they fall just short, as we mentioned just a moment ago. The Anthony Richardson era ends in Indianapolis. And Cam Ward, it's a year of improvement, a year of promise, not so much the win-loss column. So don't get caught up on the 5-12 record. You really just want to see the eye test improve more so than the win-loss column. But that's going to do it here for today's episode, man. The AFC South is broken down. We answered the questions, and we predicted their records. Drop your predictions down below, and next week we will have the NFC South.